This looks absolutely ridiculous and wrong.
You'll normally find us out there traveling the world, eating and filming the best local food we can find. But right now, we're home in New Zealand, we're in quarantine, in isolation, so we're bringing those experiences that we've had in our videos all around the world back home and into the home kitchen and recreating the recipes and experiences that we've had in our videos.
I'm so pumped for today's meal. We are going to be making Momo, so dumplings that we ate in Nepal. Momos are a type of dumpling, and we've been eating our weight in Momo so that we can show you the best in the city. And this restaurant, it was knock your socks off.
So memorable. I mean, we filmed at this restaurant, but we also ate there, I think 3, 4, 5 times in our relatively short time in Kathmandu because it was so good.
It was super no-frills. The guys gave us access to the kitchen, so we were able to get in and really see how the Momo were being made.
We're super lucky because we've been allowed a peek into the kitchen.
And the taste was phenomenal.
These are a fantastic type of dumpling covered in the most incredible saucy, soupy goodness called Achar. Can't wait to recreate this one here in the kitchen at home. I'm Thomas.
I'm Sheena, and we're chasing a plate.
Let's get cooking.
We're so excited to try and recreate this Momo recipe from the restaurant that we ate at in Kathmandu. And Thomas said that we ate there about 5 times because we loved the buffalo Momo so much. Oh, Danyabad, you already know our order. We come here so often that the guys already know what we're going to order. So the restaurant served their dumplings, their buffalo dumplings, with Jhol Achar. So Jhol Achar is a soupy sort of sauce. And I reckon that this recreation is going to be the hardest that we have ever attempted. We were allowed access to the kitchen, but what we saw was just the guys making up the dumplings and putting them into the steamer. That was pretty much it. So what we're going to have to do, as with all of these recreations, is to try and remember what the food tasted like, what we saw was being done, and try and create that same meal in our home kitchen. Now, we have got a whole range of things to work with today in terms of ingredients. Now, we don't have buffalo. You can't even get buffalo in New Zealand. So what we're using is the next best thing for us, which is beef. Now, no disrespect intended in using beef. It's just what we've got in the fridge. So beef mince instead of buffalo. And then we've got a whole plethora of spices. So I've got all sorts of things: cumin, coriander, cinnamon, nutmeg, and they're all going to go into a spice mix. And I'm going to use that spice mix and marinate the beef mince with it and hopefully create a really tasty dumpling filling. I'm going to chuck together a Momo masala, so a spice mix to marinate the meat with. And we're going to be creating every part of this Momo meal. So we're obviously going to create the filling, so the beef mince filling. We're going to make the wrappers from scratch, and we're going to create the Jhol Achar, so the soupy sauce that is going to go all over the Momo. Now, I remember the meat tasting really spice laced. It was really intense in flavour, and when I was speaking to the owner, he said there was something like between 10 or 20 different spices that went into the mix for the meat. The meat is not fatty, it's full of flavour, they're very intense. So I've got just a ton of different spices, everything from cumin, coriander, cardamom, mace, nutmeg, chili, all sorts, and I'm just going to create something which I think will taste like what we ate in Kathmandu. I've whacked up some garlic and also some fresh coriander, so we'll pop that into the mince. And then I've made up my spice mixture, so I've popped all sorts of spices in there. Now, I just want to point out with the meat, we're using really lean mince because
the guy, or the owner at the restaurant, said that their momo are really famous because the meat is very lean. There's almost no fat in it. And so that's what we've tried to replicate here, to find a really sort of fat-free mince. And what he was saying was that the flavours are very robust because of that. And I remember the mince being so intensely flavoured and very rich because it was sort of less fat and just meat heavy. So I've got all of that spice and the garlic and the coriander in there. Now I'm just going to mix it up with my hands. So I'm going to get all of that spice mixture dispersed throughout the meat, all that garlic and coriander right in there. Oh! It smells real good, so it smells really intense and spicy. Okay. The meat and spices, garlic and coriander are well and truly mixed. It smells very legit. So it is gonna go and sit in the fridge and marinate for about an hour or so, and now it's time to work on the dough.
Chucking the flour in, we're gonna make a very simple dough. So flour and water. So we've got all the just plain white flour here. We'll make a little well in the middle, and we'll get this water in there. So we didn't see the dough being made. We're just taking a simple sort of dumpling batter recipe to make this one up. What they did have at the restaurant was a really neat machine for pressing the dough down and whatnot, and I think a big machine for kneading it. We don't have any of that, so we are going to have to go manual styles. So we'll start by mixing this in, and then we're going to start kneading this dough. This is a super dry dough, so it's all been mixed up, but it's all going to be in the kneading. So we've got to get it on the bench. We'll just flour up the bench so we don't stick all over it, because nothing worse than sticking. I'm going to actually a lot of flour just to stop the sticking, and then get this dry dough and start kneading it. So we'll get all the little bits on there and then work it. And I think this is going to take a lot of working. I mean, many minutes, maybe 10-15 minutes to work this dough and prep it up. I'm about 4 minutes into working this dough, and look how much it's changing. So completely different texture now. So just got to keep working it, and this is proper good old-fashioned hard work up a sweat, get those muscles going. This is where I get reminded that I had a huge crash on my bike once and broke my wrist, and it starts to hurt. But this is the good stuff, working for your food and getting it all kneaded up. Okay, that's been a good about 10 minutes kneading that dough, so we'll just get it looking a bit tidy, and now we're going to rest it for probably 30 minutes or so, just to let the gluten in the flour just chill out, relax, and it should get a bit more stretchy with resting. We'll put it in a bag because it's a very dry dough. We don't want it to dry out any more than it already is.
It's time to work on the Jhol Achar, so the soupy sauce that gets poured all over the momo. So what they do is they serve the momo 10 to a plate, and then on the table at the restaurant is a huge jug or container full of the Jhol Achar, and it is a free-for-all. So you just grab your the jug of the Jhol Achar and you just pour it all over the momo, and it's served room temperature, so it basically gets heated up from the heat that comes off the buffalo momo. And we're just making this up as we go. I know that it had a lot of tomatoes in it. It had a really strong sesame flavour, that Jhol Achar from that restaurant, and so we're going to be adding a whole lot of ingredients that we think make up that Jhol momo. So I'm just preparing some tomatoes and also some garlic, and they're going to be roasted on the barbecue.
We'll get those tomatoes and the garlic into a roasting pan, and we're going to chuck them on the barbecue, because hopefully the smoking hot barbecue, get a bit of oil on there actually, the smoking hot barbecue might add just that little bit more depth of flavour to these roasted up tomatoes. I want to give these tomatoes just a little bit of a toss. Yeah, they're roasting up really good on the barbie. this Achar, what we're preparing here is so important for this dish. So Sheena has just cut up some onions, coriander, chili, some garlic. She's roasted some sesame seeds. And this Achar was mind-blowing. When you ate it, you poured it all over your Momo, you spooned it into your Momo. We could not get enough of it. And when you ate it, the burst of flavor was incredibly intense. But all we saw of it being prepared, well, we didn't see it being prepared. We just saw him stirring it once. So we've got not much to go on except our taste, so what we tasted, and our intuition of that. So we're just taking ingredients that we think were in there, making this up to try and get that incredible flavor of the Achar that was with the Momo in that restaurant in Kathmandu. So hopefully these ingredients come together to just give us that mind-blowing taste that we had in Kathmandu.
Let's get into this Jhol Achar. So I'm just going to fry off some onion and then also some chili. And I've also got some crushed mustard, yellow mustard seeds in here as well. So let's throw a bit of that into the pan. The onion has really cooked down. It's almost got a little bit of a caramelized char to it, and I don't mind that because that is just going to add more flavor. Now, Thomas has roasted up these tomatoes and the garlic. I'm just going to put that into the pan. I might not pop all of the tomatoes in to start off with, but I will take all of the juice. So make sure all of the garlic's in there as well. And then we're going to add this coriander. So the whole lot of coriander. It had a really strong coriander flavor, and it also had a really strong sesame flavor. So I've roasted a whole ton of sesame seeds right up in the pan, and I've also got some cumin seeds as well. So we're going to add all of that into the pan. Look at the color of the mixture, and it's really fragrant with the sesame seeds, which is really important because the Jhol Achar at the restaurant was very strong in sesame flavor. I've added some salt, pepper, lemon juice. We're going to let the mixture cool, and then we're going to blend it all up to turn it into that liquid consistency that it was at the restaurant.
Time to start working with this dough that has been resting. Now this bit we've got to do manually. They had a machine, so they had an amazing machine that was taking the dough and turning it into the little wrappers for the Momo. We sure don't have a machine here at home, so we just have to do this all by hand, although we are going to fashion a wee machine out of a plastic goblet. That's as close as we get to a machine. So look at this beautiful ball of dough. It's got a lot more sticky feeling, and I'm just going to take a little portion to work with. I don't want to be working with the whole thing because it will dry out if I leave it sitting. Oh yes, that has come up beautifully. So we'll wrap that back up, keep it nice and wet, and then I want to just portion this. So I've got lots of flour on the bench. When we walked into the back room at the restaurant, in the kitchen, you could see there was a lot of flour all around the place, just coating, and it's so important when you're working with dough. So a lot of flour, and let's just fashion this into some little sort of wrapper sized balls so I can work with each of them individually. Okay, I've rolled that out into a pretty rough circle. Now I want it to be quite thick because it's quite a robust skin they use. It's not a super thin dumpling skin. Let's see how this cup trick works. Give it a push. Ooh yeah, so there we go, nice little circle. I think they're going to be about the right size, maybe a fraction small, but we can work with that to make our Momo with. Forming up a nice little stack of these Momo wrappers. Now fingers crossed this dough works out better than the last time we did a recreation video involving dough. We were doing roti for an Indian video that we'll link up there, and it was a complete and utter disaster. So fingers crossed we get this one a bit more correct. So far this is very fun and seems to be coming together pretty well. I'm pretty happy with the thickness of these for a nice robust dumpling skin, so they won't break when we put them in the steamer.
Thomas has done such a good job making these dumpling wrappers. So as he mentioned before, when we were at the restaurant, they actually had a machine making these. So they fed the dough into the machine and then it was spitting the wrappers out. So they're all a uniform size. Now, it's just time to grab and go. So we've got the mince here. I've added a bit of oil to moisten it up. I'm just gonna grab one of these wrappers and a little bit of meat and pop it in the middle. That's probably a little bit too much meat. And what they were doing was just pleating. And the guys who were making the momos were absolute whizzes at it. They were going so fast. I'm like going at the pace of a snail. So they were pleating, this looks absolutely ridiculous and wrong, and then they sort of twisted it off like that. It looked nothing like this because this is completely open, so that is going to just burst out. I think we need to practice our momo making skills and then come back to you. We are in absolute hysterics over making these momo because we are so bad at it. When the guys were making the momo at the restaurant, they made it look so effortless. They grabbed the dumpling wrapper, the momo wrapper, they popped in a bit of the buff meat, so quite a sizable amount, and then they just pleated it. They pressed the buff into the dough, and then they just pleated it, which is what I'm trying to do, and then they just went like this with a flourish and finished it off. Actually, that's not so bad. That's probably my best one yet. But look at these ones that we've made down here. So we've got some little, look at this little runt here. It's tiny. This is probably my best one, and this one that Thomas made is probably his best effort. The momo are ready to be steamed. We've got to get this Jhol Achar going. So I've got a stick blender and I'm just going to zhuzh this baby up. All right, blended up the Achar as much as we could. It's quite chunky. We added a bit of water to loosen up the mixture, but it's definitely chunkier than the one at the restaurant, but the flavor is spot on. Now it is time to get these momos into the steamer. Look at these beauties. Now I'm going to just oil the bottom of the steamer so that the momos don't stick. And a saving grace of recreating this particular recipe is that when the guys were putting the momos into the steamer, they were grabbing the momos and they were plopping them like top side down. So they were just sort of pressing them onto the steamer like that. So that means that you don't get to see the ugly bits of our momos, which is perfect.
Got the momo stacked up in the tray. This was one of the most impressive bits at the restaurant, the huge trays of momo that they were preparing and the massive steamers. And they had three sorts of momo. They had buff, chicken and veg. And so right on the street frontage is the massive steamers, but the buffalo's the most popular momo. So the big one here, the steam pouring out of it, that's for the buffalo momos. We're going with the steamer that we've got. Oh yes, get those straight on. Get them cooking over the steamer.
The momo are about ready to come out of the steamer. Let's get this lid off for the big reveal. Whoa, look at them. Oh wow, they look really good. I really loved seeing the momos come out of the steamer at the restaurant. They had these huge piles of momo. They were cooking about 50 to 100 at one time, and they looked sort of like these ones. These look pretty good. They've come up really well. So let's just get them onto the plate. Wow. Ooh. So let's just chuck a whole lot of them on. So they were serving them 10 to a plate. And at the restaurant they had these big plastic bottles full of the Jhol Achar, and you could just help yourself. So you got your steaming plate of momos put on the table, and then it was straight in with the Jhol Achar. So I'm just going to pour it straight over the momo and really load it up. Oh, swimming in that Jhol Achar.
Time for the big taste test to see how we've done with these momos. So a couple of things that stand out for me that are different. The colour of the Achar is slightly different. It's a much more orange, red colour, and it's much thicker, that Achar bit. You know.
And there's definitely one ingredient missing, and that is Szechuan peppercorns. We don't have any Szechuan peppercorns in the house. It's definitely more of a sauce, this Jhol Achar, than a soup. But cheers.
Let's go. Oh man. Mmm. 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 Kathmandu. Oh.
Holy moly.
That is taking me right back. Oh, the cumin. A lot of cumin coming out of the Momo itself. So the meat that's in the Momo. Big burst of cumin. And that is exactly what happened at the restaurant. Huge burst of spices. Going for more.
The meat is very much seasoned the way that it was at the restaurant. The dumplings probably, the dumpling wrapper is probably a bit thicker.
Bit thicker.
Here.
Yeah, a little bit thicker.
But the flavours are real good.
Mmm. Oh no. Mmm.
Mmm.
Mmm. It's exactly like it was in Nepal. Wrapper's a bit thick, like Sheena said. That Achar, the Achar is actually thinning up as well as it's heating up more and more. That's what I love about it. It goes on room temperature. And in Nepal, it was quite cold. We were wearing big puffer jackets, so it was cold weather. So the Achar was very cold going on, but you poured it on and the Momo just heated it up. And that's exactly what's happening here. So you're getting this beautiful hot soup.
It could probably be thinned down a little bit more with water. Could do with perhaps a touch more chili. But overall, I think it's come out pretty dang good, except for the wrapping.
Except for the wrapping. The look of the wrapping is terrible, and there's some fatter bits where we've pinched it. So our wrapping needs practice, but our flavours...
Flavour-wise,
absolutely.
it's real good.
Happy with that. Oh, that was good. Remember, lots more of these videos coming. So hit subscribe, hit thumbs up if you've enjoyed this one. Leave us a comment. Having a great time making these recreations of street food here in the home kitchen. So while we're on quarantine and we cannot travel, let's bring the flavors that we've enjoyed in our videos back to the home kitchen.
See you next time. Thumbs up and subscribe.